Canon will be releasing the R5 II very soon with a speculated price point of around $4,000. And this begs the question, is this something that you should buy? And is this going to be the future of photography? By the end of this video, we will answer those two questions and you will know whether it's worth upgrading or even checking out. First, let's go over the Canon R5 and some of the weaknesses that could definitely use improvements. And the reason I want to start with the weaknesses of this camera is because it really doesn't have that many. The first being the mini HDMI port. Now, this is more annoying to me personally than anything. It just seems unnecessarily fragile. I could see this definitely being a big problem if you're shooting a lot out in the field with external monitors and things. This is something that I don't do. I mostly use the HDMI port in studio. It just seems like a real oversight on Canon's part, and they should make it a full-size HDMI port. My biggest complaint probably with this camera is that its battery life kind of sucks, honestly, especially compared to the older DSLRs like the 5D Mark IV. I would guess it gets about half the battery life of one of those cameras. I have also had this camera lock up on me a few times actually while shooting. And what I shoot, portraits and studio and portrait work, not the end of the world. I've had to take the battery out, pop it back in and got things working. One of the times it was a corrupted SD card and I had to just low level format it and that took care of things. But I did have it happen to me a couple other times and it was quite concerning. And if I was out shooting a very important event or a wedding or something like that, I would be a little hesitant to take this camera and shoot it based on just the couple times that happened. Lastly is the terrible way you need to set the custom white balance in the video mode. They came up with a better option for photos and I really love that, but it's still a pain in the butt to go over and take a still image of your test target and then come back over in video mode, find that image to set a custom white balance. It just seems like they're kind of crippling the camera in that way, and I really wish they would address that in a firmware update. Now, before we can get into the exciting stuff, I need you to smash that subscribe button. I release a new photography video like this every week, and you're not gonna wanna miss them. So real quick, let's go over all the great things about the Canon R5 and what we hope to see in the Canon R5 II. For me, this camera is more than adequate and quite possibly the perfect camera for running a portrait studio or business. It really leaves little to be desired in that regard. It has a really great autofocus system. You know, 1 year ago we could have only dreamed of, and we have that today. You can take tack sharp images at f1.2 all day long, and that is pretty incredible. Ergonomics is pretty spot on. For me, it's still a little bit small. So for a stills only camera, it is, in my opinion, nearly perfect. And in that regard, I really see any updates to this camera would mostly have to be, for me personally, to more of the video side of things. And even that's really good. So let's quickly look at the leaked specs of the new Canon R5 II. This is reportedly going to have, so this is still all speculation, but we can definitely hope. A 45 megapixel CMOS sensor will have a stacked architecture, which means it will have a higher readout speed and potentially even higher than what the R3 has. So the same megapixel count, but with the faster readout, it should mitigate any like rolling shutter when shooting video. Not sure how this is gonna affect the image quality as far as for stills per se, but it should have a faster frames per second, and that will make this camera more appealing to wildlife and sports photographers for sure. A 3.2 inch OLED touchscreen. So I've always felt that Canon's screens have been at least on par with the best, if not the best. So is an OLED screen necessary? Well, I mean, if they make the screen better, yeah. Like my only concern would be that I hope it doesn't draw more energy. From what I gather, OLED screen, depending on what's being displayed, can draw more or less energy because it tends to turn the black pixels off. The R5 II is going to supposedly have a pre-burst and an upgraded continuous burst rate of 60 frames per second. Now this will probably excite sports and wildlife shooters. I am a little confused as if they are aiming the R5 II at that target a little bit more. I mean, surely it's not going to be as robust in that regards as the R1, but I guess we'll have to see once they actually are in people's hands. Advanced AI powered autofocus. Now the autofocus on the R5 is already, it's so good. And I suppose in 10 years, I could look back and be like, man, how did I ever shoot with that R5? That autofocus was just terrible. I mean, but in reality, yes, better autofocus, please. The video recording specs that have been leaked, it just says 8K RAW and 4K up to 120 frames per second. So as far as I can tell, that is redundant and the same as in the R5. I also found a lot of mixed messages on the shutter. Some initially saying they were gonna take out the mechanical shutter altogether, and now saying that they're going to leave it in. And I do have some concerns with that. I know I saw reported problems with the Z8 as far as off-camera flash goes. I don't know the extent of it, but I did see some people having banding issues. And I had the exact same problem with some Sony cameras because I didn't know I needed to have the mechanical shutter on. So I was taking off-camera flash in high-speed sync with the electronic shutter on, and it gave me really bad banding and almost completely ruined a photo shoot for me. So if they do eliminate the mechanical shutter, I just hope they're aware of any issues in that regards, because I do use off-camera flash quite often in very high sync speeds. Better yet, I hope they just leave it as an option to have the mechanical shutter on, or it gets addressed, one or the other. Better overheating prevention. This is a welcome feature, especially with the higher readout rates of the supposed sensor that's going to be in it. But again, with the firmware updates, I've had no overheating issues with the R5 since. And lastly, some reported ergonomic improvements that have come over from the R6. So that's cool. I have not held an R6 Mark II, but I have read and heard good things. So those are the specs that I found and have read about, heard about, watched. And it sounds like it could be a really cool camera. But now for the ultimate question. So will the R5 Mark II be the future of photography with its updated AI improvements? I believe it will be, for better or for worse. Canon has traditionally set the playing field, or at least always brought something significant to the table, especially within this range of camera, even when lagging behind the competition by quite a bit. And it just seems like more AI integration and insane tech capabilities is really kind of the way digital photography is going, and I don't see that ship slowing down in the slightest. It's my view that camera companies are competing with each other for the best tech and solving problems that we as consumers didn't even know we had, leaving us kind of chasing the next shiny thing.
Ooh, a piece of candy.
I did not know that I would need animal eye autofocus, but when I get a dog in front of my camera, it's an absolute game changer and a lifesaver. Now, my fear with all of this is at some point it's just going to be an inconvenience to even have to take the picture at all. Why not just push a button and have AI create the image for us, which it seems like that's what's starting to happen in a way. And some people are already doing this using AI technology. Photoshop's releasing out that capability, Midjourney, etc., to create images. For me, that's totally fine if that's what you want to do. I think that's an art form in itself, and I don't see anything wrong with it. I do embrace AI and technology. I personally just find it messes up with my grassroots enjoyment of the process. It's kind of the same reason I'm not a huge fan of taking pics with my iPhone, but that's just me, and these are just my thoughts. Now, I can honestly say ever since I started shooting with mirrorless cameras and increasingly with the AI technology, it feels more and more like computers are taking the pictures and not me. Again, ultimately, I think this is where photography is headed. I don't think there's a way of stopping it. I don't think it's bad or good, but it is the reason why a lot of my work has taken a step backwards in time, back to film. So will I be upgrading to the R5 Mark II?
I don't know.
Most likely, yeah. Am I in a hurry or super pumped to do so? Not really. So let me know your thoughts in the comments down below. Do you fully embrace AI and think that the R5 Mark II is going to be a game-changing camera? Or has Canon kind of like shot themselves in the foot just one too many times with the limitations and the slow releases and not listening to their customers? Maybe I'm just being old-fashioned about this, like tech and AI, but let me know. And definitely don't miss out on this video about shooting with big, soft portrait light anytime.